So for this episode of our Literature in Focus, I'm going to read to you a literary criticism or a commentary I wrote and published in 2016 on my blog. This was a time that I just finished reading The Hunger Games and was still high with it. But before I proceed to reading to you my analysis, let's talk about the author first. Suzanne Collins is an American writer who is best known for her books, The Underland Chronicles and the young adult dystopian fiction, The Hunger Games. She started her career in writing in the year 1991 for children's television shows. While Suzanne's expertise would probably be writing for children, her young adult fiction also became a big hit and has become a New York Times bestselling novel for quite some years. The first book in the Hunger Games trilogy was published in 2008, followed by Catching Fire in 2009 and The Mockingjay in 2010. 10 years after, in 2020, the prequel The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was published. The books were also successfully turned into a movie, with the first movie being shown in 2012. So I'm going to share to you now parts of my analysis. Disclaimer, these are my personal opinion about this story, backed up with some knowledge on literature and criticism. Also, I've only selected some parts to read, which I think are very important to highlight about this story. So, as a curious cat as I am, I looked for a copy of the book and immersed myself into Katniss Everdeen's world and the Hunger Games. The book was interesting enough that I found myself hesitating to put it down and stop reading. I was glad it became my companion every time I was standing on the line for a cab on my way back home. The long hours of waiting in the line every night didn't seem too long for me, thanks to Miss Suzanne Collins. And right after I finished the first book of the trilogy, I told myself I'd do anything to grab the second book. I felt the need to satiate my thirst for the continuation of this story, now that Katniss and lover boy Peeta Mellark, who was also from District 12, were already crowned as victors. More than anything, I think what kept me reading the book was the strong connection and spark between the main characters. The fire wasn't enough representation of the ignition between the two. Peeta's attitude also confused me at first, but later on it dawned on me that he was just in love with the girl, so he did everything to save her in the best way that he could. And the second book, I couldn't help but feel confused also, just like how Katniss was torn in between her best friend Gale and Peeta. The tension kept getting more intense even when the games were over because of Katniss's complex webs of problems she didn't expect to face after the battle. It was like the games weren't over at all. And the third installment just killed me with all the emotional roller coaster and tortures each of the characters received. It tore my heart apart when the star-crossed lovers were separated because of the war. And it broke me just as much as it broke Katniss when she learned that Peeta's memories were distorted and programmed so as he'd kill her. I was still confused as to what Katniss really felt for Peeta, but I was still rooting for a happy ending for this too. Well, Gale was a pretty good match for Katniss too. They understood each other really well, but I just felt that there was so much angst between the two. There was fire also, a spark, but it was just too intense and dangerous they could burn together. But of course, I wasn't just focused with the love angle the books offer. The fire was just a symbol of the burning flame of love and emotions, but it was also more of the engulfing fire of rebellion, trying to unshackle all of the districts from the capital. Of course, more than anything else, the action was what made the book The Hunger Games. Collins was able to transport us into a world which is more than scary, if ever it be true. The brutality, the merciless killing, the instinct to survive were loss of a very ancient civilization we only came to know through books of history now, but ironically were present in a world so new and modern like Panem. The first book was able to give us a glimpse of a cruel world where tributes were only puppets playing in accordance to the capital's amusements. The second book was able to imbibe the haunting nightmares the games had carved into the victors' memories. In this book, we learned that there was no getting away from the games even after the battle was all done and finished. The third book had all the elements of rebellion. It was very political above anything else. Before I was able to get my hand on the third book of the series, I asked some friends who've read the trilogy. One told me that he stopped reading Mockingjay because it gives a claustrophobic feeling, like he was inside a glass or something and he couldn't escape. I got curious when he told me that. One friend also told me he didn't like the ending because he thought it was ended immediately. After I read all the books, I went to Google and looked for some reviews. I got the same reactions. Like, readers move from one plot point to another. I tried to reflect and thought if I felt the same way. I did, in a way. At the last chapter of the third book, I thought I wouldn't get the resolution I want to read, that I wouldn't get the closure. The Collins didn't fail me, and all the fans rooting for Katniss and Peeta, or at least for a happy ending that the characters deserve. Well, it wasn't that happy ending, but at least the characters got a taste of life they all been yearning to have all these years. However, the ending also gives off the gripping and saddening feeling for the readers, knowing that not all who fought for freedom got the taste of it. Well, that was what a war can do. Not everyone could stay to feel it. Some has to sacrifice their lives for the sake of others having it. And I've learned that the third book had that claustro feeling not only because the first part of the story was situated in the depths of the ground in 13, but also because Katniss was encapsulated in a tablet that was created for her. The role that she has to fill as the Mockingjay. The war was also very suffocating, and the propagandas were more of an ad that was aimed to play with the people's feelings to make the fire blazing more than ever. All in all, I must say, I was pleased with how Collins managed to end the book. Yes, there were some blur of the narrations, but it was given due to the circumstances Katniss went into. But I guess the ending was the ending because after all what happened, everyone couldn't get that happy kind of happy ending. It wouldn't be real if there wouldn't be traces of scars left to the victims of the war and the Hunger Games. What amazes me also was the feelings Suzanne Collins was able to make me feel after I read the book. I got so attached to the story, to the characters, that I felt sad with every single death. But more than the entertainment purposes the book had served me, I'd like to delve into its impact as a piece of literature. The books hold about a number of symbols that we can't just take for granted. Like any piece of literature, The Hunger Games also has message to convey. For a start, the story was situated in Panem, where it was divided into 13 districts under the authoritarian leadership of the capital. Each district supplies a good of their expertise to the capital, and ironically, they don't get to enjoy the product they all worked hard for. People in every district all depended on rations the capital allowed them to get, which was of course unfair because while the capital people had a lavish lifestyle, people in the districts were dying out of hunger, extreme exhaustion, poverty, and even punishments for little resistance showed against the tyrannical representatives of the capital and the districts, the peacekeepers. We can trace this same arrangement in the history of the United States. There was a time where North America was divided into 13 colonies: Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Virginia. Just like any other colonies, these countries served and gave portion of their labors to the British government. In the story, hunger and poverty were everywhere in the districts. The very picture of the story was a country oppressed and abused by the authoritarian colonizer. The setup isn't also just a trace of America before, but of any other country that was oppressed during the World War I and II and until now. We need not to use a Marxist's point of view to see how oppression is one of the themes of the books. We can clearly see the divisions between the people of the districts and the people of the capital. That the first was the less privileged and the latter was living lavishly. Even in the districts, there seemed to be a line that divides them as to whom is more or less powerful. The first two districts were the capital's favorite, according to Katniss's observation. Their tributes were stronger and trained as compared to the tributes of the other districts, thus making Katniss tag them as the carriers. The carriers also get to have more sponsors. More people are rooting on them every annual Hunger Games. That is why, in the beginning, Katniss and Peeta, as well as the other less privileged tributes, felt a little helpless and incompetent as compared to the carriers. Like, there's no chance for them to win. The stratification is also evident in the respective districts, especially as seen in District 12, where those in the seat of power have better lives, and those leaving the seam have the roughest ones. Peeta, as the baker's son, is even surrounded by lots of friends at school, while Katniss only has Gale, and from time to time the mayor's daughter. Oppression, famine, capitalism, all this are still greatly manifested in our times, thus making us readers relate to the lives of the characters. The Hunger Games also, which has held every year since the Dark Ages, was a television show everyone was required to watch. It was a way to remind the people that the only thing the war had cost them was the loss of their loved ones. It was used to instill fear to the people, and it had paralyzed them for such a long time. But at the same time, it was a way of entertainment for the people of Capital. Tributes were expected to act in a way that would capture the attention of the people who would be willing to sponsor them. Every act, just like how Katniss kissed Peeta 1,000 times in the games, is equivalent to a gift the sponsors would be willing to give them as long as what they do would amuse them. This scenario mirrors today's society. The things we often see on television were mere dramas, scripted and designed to appeal to us, to entertain us, or to quench our thirst for something fun and exciting. Sometimes, TV shows become our escape to the mundane reality. There are also reality TV shows nowadays that aim to show what real life is, as to which we can heavily relate to. But every now and then, there'd be a question as to how real everything is shown in those shows. Sometimes we can't help but to think these are all scripted, and personally, I think reality shows are scripted too in a way. We people have this tendency to only look at things we want to see, and the television let us see what we want to see. So in a way, the Games is a reality TV show, and the tributes were actors who can't let televiewers see inside them. They should wear a determined, strong, and unfailing facade so the viewers can rely and bet on them to win. The game makers were cruel puppeteers, willing to put their puppets' lives in chaos and trouble just to give happiness and satisfaction to the people of Capital. Like today, it is hard to see what's real and what's not in the shows we watch on TV and other platforms where we usually get information. It's hard to assess the veracity of things shown in front of us. Moreover, feminism is also evident in the story. In a place where hunger and oppression exist, there is no place for women in the society. But as always, women struggle to survive in a cruel society. It can be clearly manifested as to how Katniss's mother tried to recover herself from the horrors of Katniss's father's death. Slowly, she came back to life, and her gift in healing and knowledge in medicine greatly helped a lot of people in the times of hardship and war. Primrose, Katniss's younger sister, is also an example of women's power. Though she isn't as physically strong as her elder sister, Primrose exhibits her power as she's the one who's more sensible in the family. She thinks in a more mature way and she sees things in a different perspective. While she got their mother's gift in preserving people's lives, she also got their father's sense of wisdom. Katniss, of course, is the main symbol of a woman's strength. She's clever and she's brave in a way that it captured the people's attention, and it spurred a deep sense of fire within them. She's strong. However, Katniss has her own dilemmas too. She doubted herself, her strength, her capacity, and she didn't believe in herself. But she has a power which she didn't see as that powerful. She didn't know that the fire within her can burn the capital into ashes. Women empowerment is very evident in the story, as the heroine is much stronger than the hero in physical sense. Peeta has his own power and strength too. Yet Katniss's power is much more domineering even. The battle against President Stone, Panem's leader, and President Coin, District 13's president, even intensified this point of the story. With President Coin slowly emerging and taking President Stone out of his throne, it symbolizes women's slow progression in the society. The story showed us, through its very effective and strong female characters, that women have the power to lead too. However, though, in the end, it was learned that President Coin has his wicked intention to lead Panem, thus giving way for a new leader, a female president too. The journey to reading Katniss's, Peeta's, Gale's, and all the other characters' stories was worth it. There was an intense combination of emotions that's going to flow in your veins as you read it. And the pictures it portrays to the readers are so vivid that you'll actually feel transported to Panem. It was scary because the reality projected by the books is so tangible that it felt like it might really happen in the future. The love story and the action were a right balance. And I loved it more because of the elements it depicted. The tension between the rich and the poor, men versus women, people against the society, and self against oneself. It is indeed a work of literature where there is a catharsis that you'd feel once you read it. And there is no doubt that this will be the classic book kids of the next generation would be reading.